In the silence between what we know and what we cannot explain, ancient hands once held objects that whisper of impossible knowledge. Stone speaks of precision beyond its time, metal remembers techniques lost to centuries, and crystal holds light that should not exist in ages before electricity touched the world. These artifacts rest now in museums and private collections. Their true origins shrouded in the gentle mist of mystery, their purposes drifting like smoke through scholarly debates that never quite settle into certainty. Tonight, as consciousness softens at the edges and the boundary between waking and dreaming grows thin, we journey into these quiet contradictions of history, where objects refuse to fit the neat timelines we have drawn, and where the past holds secrets that make the present seem less certain, less final than we once believed. If this journey into history gently moves you, take a second to like, share and subscribe. It helps more sleepy minds find their way here. By the way, where in the world are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment before you drift off and we read every single one. The first whisper of impossibility comes not from gold or jewels, but from stone. Cold, enduring stone that should tell simple stories of hammer and chisel, yet instead murmurs of techniques that slip through the fingers of understanding like water through cupped hands. In the mountains of Peru, where the air grows thin and the sky presses close to earth, massive blocks of granite and diorite rest one upon another, with a precision that defies the tools we imagine ancient hands once held. At Sacsayhuamán, above the city of Cusco, stones weighing hundreds of tons fit together without mortar, their surfaces matching so perfectly that not even a knife blade can slide between them. The Spanish conquistadors, confronting these walls for the first time, believed they looked upon the work of demons, for surely no human hand could achieve such impossible precision. Yet here the stones remain, unchanged by centuries of earthquake and weather, their surfaces polished to a mirror shine that reflects not just light, but questions that have no answers. The archaeologists speak of bronze tools and rope and ramps, their voices measured and careful, yet uncertainty lingers in the spaces between their words. How does bronze cut granite? How do ropes move stones that dwarf the strongest modern cranes? The official explanations hover like morning mist over the mountainside, substantial yet somehow ethereal, never quite settling into the solid certainty that the stones themselves possess. But Sacsayhuamán is not alone in its silent defiance of historical expectation. Far to the east in the mountains of Lebanon, the Roman ruins of Baalbek hold their own impossible secret. The Temple of Jupiter stands upon a foundation of stone blocks so vast that they seem to belong to a different scale of creation entirely. The Trelithon, 3 stones each weighing nearly 1,000 tons, fitted together with the same inexplicable precision found in Peru. The Romans, masters of engineering whose roads and aqueducts still function after 2 millennia, left no record of how they moved these megalithic foundations. Their meticulous accounts detail the construction of the temple above, but the foundation stones rest in historical silence, as if they had always been there, waiting for human civilization to grow tall enough to build upon them. And in the quarry nearby lies another mystery, the stone of the pregnant woman, a single block of limestone weighing over 1,000 tons, carved and ready for transport yet never moved. It waits still, this abandoned monument to impossible ambition, its surfaces finished with the same impossible precision, its purpose lost to time. What technique could move such weight? What need could justify such effort? The stone offers no answers, only its mute testimony to capabilities that history has not recorded. The mystery deepens when one considers the global nature of these precise stoneworks. On Easter Island, far from any continental influence, massive moai statues were carved from volcanic tuff and somehow transported across the island's difficult terrain. The traditional explanation speaks of rolling the statues on logs, yet the island's trees were cut down centuries ago, and the moai themselves show no damage from such rough handling. Recent experiments suggest the statues could have been walked upright using ropes, a technique that requires knowledge of physics and coordination that seems advanced for the time period traditionally assigned to their creation. But the moai are not merely carved, they are precisely positioned, oriented, according to astronomical alignments that demonstrate mathematical knowledge of celestial mechanics. Their eyes, once fitted with coral and obsidian, gaze not randomly across the landscape but towards specific points on the horizon, where stars would rise at significant moments in the calendar. This is not the work of primitive islanders struggling for survival, but of sophisticated astronomers whose understanding of the cosmos rivaled that of their contemporaries in Europe and Asia. The same precision appears in Egypt, where the Great Pyramid of Giza demonstrates mathematical relationships that suggest knowledge of pi and the golden ratio centuries before these concepts were formally discovered by Greek mathematicians. The pyramid's base perimeter, when divided by its height, yields a remarkably accurate approximation of pi. The ratio between the pyramid's height and the width of its base approaches the golden ratio with uncanny precision. Yet the builders of the pyramid, according to conventional history, had only copper tools and rope technology. They possessed no sophisticated mathematics, no precise measuring instruments, no understanding of advanced geometry. How then does their monument demonstrate such mathematical sophistication? The contradiction sits at the heart of Egyptology like a stone in still water, creating ripples of doubt that spread outward to touch every assumption about ancient capability. The precision of the pyramid extends beyond mathematics to engineering feats that challenge modern capability. The granite blocks in the king's chamber, some weighing over 50 tons, were lifted to a height of nearly 300 feet and positioned with millimetre accuracy. The chamber's walls are perfectly square, its ceiling blocks fitted so precisely that their joints remain invisible without close inspection. Modern attempts to replicate this precision using proposed ancient techniques have failed repeatedly. Copper saws dull against granite after cutting mere inches. Ramps steep enough to reach the pyramid's height would require more material than the pyramid itself. The logistics of coordinating thousands of workers with only voice commands and hand signals stretch credibility beyond reasonable limits. Yet the pyramid stands, its silence more eloquent than any explanation. Its creators left no detailed records of their methods, as if the technique was so commonplace as to require no documentation. This absence of instruction manuals speaks to a technological confidence that seems inconsistent with the primitive methods traditionally attributed to the pyramid's construction. The mystery extends to the smaller details that reveal unexpected sophistication. The pyramid's ventilation shafts, long thought to be symbolic pathways for the pharaoh's soul, were recently discovered to maintain a constant airflow that keeps the interior chambers at a stable temperature. This climate control system demonstrates an understanding of aerodynamics and thermodynamics that predates by millennia the formal study of these scientific principles. The shafts themselves present another puzzle. Their angles correspond precisely to the positions of specific stars at the time of the pyramid's construction, suggesting that they serve not only as ventilation, but as astronomical observation tools. This dual purpose, practical and ceremonial, engineering and spiritual, reveals a sophistication of thought that integrates multiple disciplines in ways that modern specialists, with their narrow focus, find difficult to achieve. Similar integrated thinking appears in other ancient stoneworks around the world. At Stonehenge, the massive sarsen stones were shaped and positioned to create both an architectural masterpiece and an astronomical computer. The monument's alignment with solstices and equinoxes is well known, but recent research reveals far more complex astronomical relationships. The spacing of the stones creates sight lines that track not only the sun's movements but also the cycles of the moon and the precession of specific stars. This requires observations spanning multiple generations and mathematical calculations that transform those observations into physical architecture. The monument serves as a three-dimensional calendar, its stones marking significant moments in celestial cycles with an accuracy that rivals modern astronomical instruments. Yet Stonehenge was built during the Neolithic period, when Britain was supposedly inhabited by simple farmers whose greatest technological achievement was the development of agriculture. The conventional timeline places the monument's construction at a time when writing had not yet been invented, when mathematics consisted of basic counting, when astronomy meant little more than noting the seasons. The contradiction between attributed capability and demonstrated achievement appears throughout the archaeological record. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, massive stone pillars arranged in circles predate Stonehenge by thousands of years. The site's construction required quarrying, carving and transporting stones weighing up to 16 tons. This at a time when humans were supposedly nomadic hunter-gatherers who had not yet invented agriculture, pottery or the wheel. The pillars themselves are covered with intricate relief carvings depicting animals and abstract symbols whose meaning remains unknown. The artistry demonstrates advanced sculpting techniques and artistic sophistication that seems inconsistent with the primitive lifestyle traditionally attributed to Paleolithic peoples. Moreover, the site was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE, covered with tons of earth in an operation that would have required coordinated effort from hundreds of workers. Why would a nomadic people undertake such massive construction projects? Why would they then deliberately conceal their achievement? The questions multiply without resolution, each answer revealing new layers of mystery. The site challenges not only our understanding of ancient capability, but our assumptions about the development of civilization itself. The pattern repeats across continents and millennia. In Bolivia, the ruins of Tiwanaku demonstrate stone-cutting precision that matches the finest examples from Peru and Egypt. The Acapana pyramid stones fit together with the same impossible accuracy, their surfaces polished to the same mirror finish. The site's altitude, over 12,000 feet above sea level, creates additional engineering challenges that somehow the builders overcame without leaving records of their methods. The Gateway of the Sun at Tiwanaku presents another mystery. Carved from a single block of andesite, the gateway weighs over 10 tons, yet demonstrates precision that would challenge modern stone carvers. The reliefs covering its surface show astronomical symbols whose meaning remains partially decoded, suggesting knowledge of celestial mechanics that required centuries of careful observation and mathematical calculation. But perhaps the most puzzling aspect of these global stone monuments is their similarity despite their separation by vast distances and supposedly isolated cultures. The precision techniques, the astronomical alignments, the mathematical relationships, these appear independently around the world during roughly the same historical period, as if guided by shared knowledge that has left no direct trace in the archaeological record. This global similarity suggests either unprecedented cultural contact between distant civilizations, or the inheritance of techniques from a common source, whose own achievements have been lost to history. Either explanation challenges conventional understanding of ancient capability and cultural development, forcing consideration of possibilities that academic orthodoxy has long dismissed. The silence of stone becomes more profound when viewed in this global context. Each monument stands as testimony to capabilities that official history cannot accommodate, yet their existence cannot be denied. They rest in perfect contradiction to our understanding of the past, monuments to knowledge that was somehow lost, and techniques that were somehow forgotten. As consciousness drifts towards sleep and the boundaries between certainty and possibility grow soft, these stone mysteries offer a different kind of rest. the peace that comes not from answers but from accepting the presence of questions too large for simple resolution. The stones wait in their patient silence, holding secrets that may never be fully revealed, their precision a gentle reminder that the past contains depths we have barely begun to explore. In the quiet spaces between what we know and what the stones remember, mystery becomes not an obstacle to understanding but a doorway to wonder. Tonight, as the world settles into darkness and the ancient monuments stand sentinel under starlight, their impossible precision continues its silent testimony to capabilities that history has not recorded, techniques that time has not preserved, and knowledge that rests now only in the patient memory of stone. From stone's patient silence, the mysteries shift to metal's more volatile secrets. Where stone endures through passive resistance to time's erosion, metal tells its stories through chemical composition and crystalline structure, through alloys that shouldn't exist and purity that ancient technology couldn't achieve. In laboratories around the world, metallurgists examine artifacts that challenge not just historical timelines, but the very understanding of how human knowledge develops and spreads. The Delhi Iron Pillar stands as perhaps the most famous of these metallurgical mysteries. Rising over 23 feet into the Indian sky, this iron column has resisted rust for over 16 centuries. Modern metallurgy explains iron corrosion as an inevitable chemical process. Iron oxidizes when exposed to moisture and oxygen, forming the reddish-brown coating we call rust. Every piece of iron, from ancient tools to modern structures, follows this predictable path of decay. Yet the Delhi pillar stands pristine, its surface unmarked by the corrosion that should have consumed it long ago. Analysis reveals an iron purity of 99.72%, a level of refinement that challenges our understanding of ancient smelting techniques. The pillar contains trace amounts of phosphorus and other elements that appear to have created a protective coating, a kind of accidental metallurgical innovation that prevented oxidation. But how did ancient smiths achieve such purity? Traditional ironworking methods involve heating ore in charcoal furnaces, a process that inevitably introduces impurities. The temperatures required to remove these impurities and achieve 99.72% purity approach the melting point of iron itself, requiring precise temperature control that medieval technology could not maintain. Modern steel production uses sophisticated techniques, electric arc furnaces, oxygen injection, computer-controlled atmospheres, to achieve comparable purity. The pillar's size compounds the mystery. 23 feet of iron represents approximately 6 tons of metal, requiring not just pure iron, but the ability to forge such a massive piece without modern machinery. The column shows no signs of welding or joining. It appears to have been created as a single continuous piece of metal. This suggests not only advanced smelting techniques, but also forged technology capable of working with unprecedented quantities of molten iron. The pillar's inscription, in Sanskrit, credits its creation to King Chandragupta Tit, who ruled in the early 5th century CE. Yet no other artifacts from this period demonstrate comparable metallurgical sophistication. The technology that created the pillar appears and disappears from history like morning mist, leaving no trace of its development or transmission to later generations. This pattern of isolated technological achievement repeats throughout the archaeological record. In Peru, archaeologists have discovered gold work that demonstrates techniques supposedly unknown to pre-Columbian civilizations. The Museum of Gold in Bogotá houses artifacts that required sophisticated metallurgy, gold-platinum alloys that needed temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius to create, precision casting techniques that produced intricate three-dimensional forms, and electroplating methods that weren't officially invented until the 19th century. The Muisca people, who created many of these artifacts, were supposedly a Stone Age culture without written language or complex technology. Yet their gold work demonstrates mastery of techniques that European metallurgists wouldn't develop for another 1,000 years. The famous El Dorado raft, discovered in a cave near Bogota, shows a level of detail and precision that requires not only artistic skill, but also deep understanding of metal's properties and behaviour. The raft's construction involved creating a detailed wax model, covering it with clay to form a mould, then melting out the wax and pouring molten gold into the resulting cavity. This lost wax casting technique produces superior results but requires precise temperature control and timing. Too hot, and the gold burns away details. Too cool, and the metal doesn't flow completely into the mould's intricate passages. But the Muisca artefacts demonstrate not just technical competence, but also innovation beyond their supposed technological level. Some pieces show evidence of depletion gilding, a technique that creates a pure gold surface on objects made from gold-copper alloys. The process involves treating the finished object with plant acids that dissolve the copper from the surface layers, leaving behind pure gold. This requires not only chemical knowledge but also understanding of plant properties and their effects on different metals. The knowledge appears too advanced for its historical context, as if these ancient metallurgists skipped entire phases of technological development. Modern metallurgy follows predictable patterns: copper first, then bronze, then iron, each stage building upon the previous discoveries and techniques. But the ancient gold workers of South America demonstrate sophisticated understanding that seems to emerge fully formed, without the gradual development that characterizes normal technological progress. Similar anomalies appear in other cultures and time periods. The Vikings, known primarily as warriors and traders, produced steel of remarkable quality using techniques that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate. Their pattern-welded swords combined different types of steel to create blades that were both hard and flexible. Hard enough to hold a sharp edge, flexible enough to bend without breaking. The process required understanding not just of temperature and timing, but of carbon content and its effects on steel's properties. Different parts of the blade needed different carbon levels, higher carbon for the cutting edge, lower carbon for the spine. This required controlling the carbon content during forging, a process that involves managing the atmosphere around the hot metal to either add or remove carbon atoms. Viking smiths achieved this control without modern instruments or scientific understanding of carbon chemistry. They worked by eye and instinct, judging temperature by colour and carbon content by spark patterns and metal behaviour. Yet their results often surpassed modern reproductions, even when contemporary smiths used temperature gauges and chemical analysis to guide their work. The legendary Damascus steel presents an even more profound mystery. These blades, forged in the Middle East during the medieval period, demonstrated properties that modern metallurgy cannot fully explain or replicate. The steel showed distinctive watered patterns on its surface and could reportedly cut through European swords while maintaining an edge sharp enough to size silk scarves in mid-air. Analysis of surviving Damascus steel reveals a microstructure containing carbon nanotubes and carbide nanowires, structures that modern materials science has only recently learned to create using sophisticated laboratory techniques. How did medieval smiths, working with charcoal forges and hand tools, create materials that require electron microscopes to fully understand? The secret of Damascus steel was lost sometime during the 18th century, despite numerous attempts to preserve and transmit the knowledge. Master smiths died without passing on their complete understanding, and the specific sources that provided the right raw materials were apparently exhausted. Modern attempts to recreate true Damascus steel have produced similar-looking metals, but not the unique properties that made the original legendary. This loss of knowledge suggests that ancient metallurgy relied not just on technique, but on understanding that couldn't be easily transmitted through written instructions. The knowledge lived in the smith's hands and eyes, in subtle judgments that required years of experience to develop. When the chain of master to apprentice transmission broke, the knowledge vanished despite the survival of examples showing what had been achieved. The pattern extends beyond steel to other metals and alloys. Roman concrete contains volcanic ash that creates hydraulic cement, allowing their structures to harden underwater and actually grow stronger over time. Modern concrete degrades within decades, yet Roman harbours and aqueducts remain functional after 2 millennia. The recipe was lost during the medieval period, and only recently rediscovered through chemical analysis of surviving structures. The aluminum mystery presents perhaps the most puzzling case of metallurgical anachronism. Aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, but it wasn't isolated as a pure element until 1825. The process requires electrolysis, using electrical current to separate aluminum from its oxide compounds. This seemed to place aluminum firmly in the modern era, unavailable to ancient metallurgists who lacked electricity and the sophisticated chemistry needed for extraction. Yet aluminum artifacts have been discovered in archaeological contexts that predate its official discovery by thousands of years. A small aluminum buckle was found in a Chinese tomb dating to the 3rd century CE. Aluminum beads have been discovered in Roman-era sites. Most puzzling of all, aluminum objects have been found in Mayan ruins in Central America, cultures that supposedly never developed metallurgy beyond basic copper and gold working. The conventional explanation suggests that these artifacts are either mislabeled or contaminated by modern aluminum through post-excavation contact. But careful analysis reveals aluminum compositions that don't match modern alloys, containing trace elements and isotope ratios that suggest different source materials and processing methods. These aren't cases of modern contamination but genuine ancient aluminum, created through unknown processes by cultures that left no record of the necessary technology. The mystery deepens when considering the energy requirements for aluminum production. Modern aluminum smelting consumes enormous amounts of electricity. Aluminum refineries are typically located near hydroelectric plants to take advantage of cheap, abundant power. How did ancient metallurgists generate the energy needed for aluminum extraction without modern electrical generation and distribution systems? Some researchers have proposed that ancient peoples discovered electrochemical processes using natural phenomena, lightning strikes, galvanic cells created by metal deposits in acidic soil, or bioelectricity generated by subcertain plants and animals. These theories push the boundaries of conventional archaeology, but offer the only plausible explanations for aluminum artifacts that shouldn't exist. The Baghdad battery presents another electrochemical mystery. Discovered in Iraq and dating to the Parthian period, 250 BCE to 250 CE, this device consists of a ceramic jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic solution, it generates approximately 1 volt of electrical current, enough to power small electronic devices or to drive electroplating processes. Mainstream archaeology interprets the device as a storage container for scrolls, noting that similar jars were commonly used for this purpose. But experiments demonstrate its electrical properties clearly. It functions as a primitive battery, generating measurable current for extended periods. If ancient peoples understood electrochemistry well enough to create batteries, what other electrical applications might they have developed? The possibility of ancient electroplating gains support from artifacts that show evidence of electrical deposition. Some ancient jewellery demonstrates gold and silver plating so thin and uniform that it could only have been achieved through electrochemical processes. The precision and consistency exceed what could be accomplished through mechanical techniques or chemical gilding methods known to ancient metallurgists. These electrical mysteries suggest technological capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient knowledge and resources. If cultures 2,000 years ago understood electricity well enough to create batteries and electroplating systems, why didn't this knowledge develop into more sophisticated electrical technology? Why did it disappear from the historical record, only to be rediscovered in the modern era? Perhaps the most profound mystery lies not in individual artifacts, but in the global distribution of advanced metallurgical knowledge. Similar techniques appear independently in cultures separated by vast distances, and apparently having no contact with each other. The precision casting methods found in South America match techniques developed in Asia. The steelworking knowledge of Vikings parallels developments in Japan and India. The copper alloying methods used in North America resemble those found in Africa and Europe. This global similarity suggests either unprecedented cultural exchange in ancient times, or inheritance from a common technological tradition whose origins have been lost to history. Either explanation challenges conventional understanding of how technology develops and spreads, forcing consideration of possibilities that academic orthodoxy has long dismissed. As sleep approaches and consciousness softens at its edges, these metallurgical mysteries offer their own kind of rest. The peace that comes from recognizing that human capability has always exceeded our expectations. The ancient smiths worked in forge light and shadow, their hands guided by knowledge that history has not preserved, their techniques producing results that modern science struggles to understand. In the quiet moments before dreams begin, these metal mysteries whisper of capabilities that time has hidden, of knowledge that was somehow lost and understanding that was somehow forgotten. The artifacts remain silent testimony to achievements that challenge every assumption about ancient limitation and modern superiority. Tonight, as the world settles into darkness and ancient metals rest in museum cases around the globe, their impossible compositions continue their mute testimony to metallurgical mastery that history has not recorded. The mechanisms whirred in silence, their bronze teeth catching starlight that had travelled centuries to witness this moment of understanding. Each gear spoke of minds that had gazed upward, not with wonder alone, but with mathematics, with precision, with the kind of patient observation that transforms mystery into mechanism. Yet even as scholars trace the pathways of these ancient calculations, deeper questions emerged like shadows cast by torchlight, questions that led not to answers but to other objects, other impossibilities always scattered across the archaeological record like breadcrumbs left by civilizations that seem to know more than they should have known. In the humid darkness of Central American jungles, where howler monkeys called across canopies that had watched the rise and fall of empires, there existed objects that defied not only the technology of their supposed age, but the very understanding of crystal structure and human capability. The crystal skulls, 13 in number according to legend, each carved from single pieces of quartz crystal with a precision that modern lapidarians approached only with diamond-tipped tools and computer-guided machinery. The first skull emerged from the shadows of Lubean Tuntun, a Maya site in Belize, where British explorer F.A. Mitchell Hedges claimed his adopted daughter Anna discovered it in 1924. She was 17 then, searching through rubble while her father mapped the ancient city's star-oriented plazas. The skull that emerged from beneath a collapsed altar seemed to catch light and hold it, to reflect it from impossible angles, creating the illusion that light moved within the crystal itself like trapped sunbeams seeking escape. Anna would later describe the moment of discovery with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious experiences. The local Maya workers, she said, fell to their knees when the skull was fully revealed, recognizing something in its carved features that connected them to ancestors whose names had been lost to vine and time. They called it the Skull of Doom, believing it held powers that could both heal and harm, depending on the intentions of those who possessed it. The skull measured precisely along anatomical lines that suggested intimate knowledge of human cranial structure. Its proportions matched those of an adult female, complete with detachable jaw that moved with the smooth precision of a masterwork mechanical joint. Under microscopic examination, no tool marks were visible, no scratches, no grinding patterns, no evidence of the abrading processes that should have been necessary to shape quartz crystal into such organic curves. Quartz crystal, with its hardness rating of 7 on the Mohs scale, required tools harder than itself for carving. Ancient Mesoamerican peoples worked with obsidian, copper and stone, materials that would have been insufficient for the precision work evident in the skulls. The impossibility deepened when researchers discovered that the skull had been carved against the natural grain of the crystal, a process that should have shattered the material long before completion. Yet the Mitchell-Hedges skull was not alone. Other crystal skulls emerged from private collections, museums, and archaeological sites across Mexico and Central America. Each carried similar impossibilities: precision beyond ancient capability, crystal work that defied material properties, optical effects that seemed to bend light in ways that contradicted basic physics. The Smithsonian Institution acquired one from Mexico, while the British Museum housed another that had supposedly passed through the hands of 19th century collectors. The mystery deepened when electron microscope analysis revealed that several skulls showed no evidence of having been carved with metal tools. Instead, the surface modification suggested a slow, gradual shaping process, as if the crystal had been worn into shape through patience rather than force, through time rather than technology. Some researchers proposed that ancient peoples had developed techniques for softening crystal through chemical or thermal processes unknown to modern science, while others suggested that the skulls represented technologies so advanced they appeared primitive to contemporary eyes. Maya creation myth spoke of 13 crystal skulls that would one day be reunited to reveal knowledge that would usher in a new age of human understanding. According to these legends, the skulls contained information about human origins, about the relationship between consciousness and matter, about technologies that operated through harmony with natural forces rather than domination over them. Each skull was said to hold specific knowledge, one containing healing wisdom, another holding keys to communication across vast distances, a third revealing the secrets of time and dimensional travel. When the 13 skulls are brought together, ancient Maya prophecy declared, they will speak with one voice and reveal to humanity its true purpose among the stars. Indigenous elders from various Mesoamerican traditions confirmed that their oral histories contained references to crystal skulls, objects of power created by ancestors who possessed knowledge that had been deliberately hidden when Spanish conquistadors arrived with cross and sword. These elders spoke of skulls that could project images, that could store and replay conversations, that could serve as communication devices between distant temples and across generations of keepers. Modern attempts to understand the skulls through conventional archaeology met with frustration. Dating crystal proved virtually impossible through traditional methods, as the material contained no organic compounds that could provide carbon dating references. Some skulls showed evidence of recent carving, tool marks consistent with 19th century diamond cutting tools, suggesting that at least some of the artifacts were modern creations designed to capitalize on growing interest in pre-Columbian mysteries. Yet even as some skulls were revealed as recent fabrications, others continued to defy explanation. The optical properties observed in certain skulls suggested knowledge of light refraction, an internal reflection that wouldn't be formally documented by European science until the development of fibre optics in the 20th century. When light was shone through specific points on some skulls, it emerged from the eye sockets in concentrated beams, creating effects that seemed to demonstrate practical application of principles that ancient peoples supposedly could not have understood. Researchers began to consider possibilities that challenged conventional timelines of human technological development. Perhaps ancient Mesoamerican peoples had developed crystal working techniques that were lost when Spanish colonization disrupted indigenous knowledge transmission. Perhaps the skulls represented interaction with advanced civilizations whose existence had been erased from official historical records. Or perhaps consciousness itself could influence matter in ways that modern science had yet to understand, allowing ancient artisans to shape crystal through mental focus and intention rather than physical tools. In 1936, while excavating ancient Mesopotamian sites near Baghdad, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered objects that would challenge understanding of ancient electrical knowledge for generations to come. Buried in ruins dating to approximately 250 BCE, these artifacts appeared to be nothing more than simple clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods. Yet when assembled according to their apparent design, they displayed characteristics that suggested ancient peoples might have understood electrical principles 2 millennia before Alessandro Volta created the first modern battery. The objects were found in groupings, always containing the same elements arranged in the same configuration. Clay vessels serving as containers, copper cylinders acting as cathodes, iron rods functioning as anodes, with evidence of acidic solutions that could have served as the electrolytes. When modern researchers replicated the design using grape juice or vinegar as the acidic medium, the resulting devices generated measurable electrical current, typically producing between 1 and 2 volts of power. Koenig's initial interpretation suggested that these devices might have been used for electroplating gold onto silver or copper objects, a process that would have required steady, controlled electrical current. The theory gained credence when archaeologists discovered numerous ancient Middle Eastern artifacts that displayed gold plating so thin and uniform that modern replication required electrochemical processes. The precision and consistency of this ancient plating work suggested technological capabilities that shouldn't have existed in pre-Christian Mesopotamia. The clay jars measured approximately 6 inches in height, with iron rods suspended inside copper cylinders through the use of asphalt stoppers. The copper cylinders showed signs of corrosion consistent with extended exposure to acidic solutions, while the iron rods displayed oxidation patterns that suggested repeated electrical activity over extended periods. Further investigation revealed that similar devices had been discovered at other Mesopotamian sites, always in context that suggested ritual or technical use rather than simple storage. Some were found in temple complexes associated with metalworking, while others emerged from workshops where precious metals had been shaped into religious objects and royal regalia. The consistency of design across different sites and time periods suggested that knowledge of these devices had been maintained and transmitted through generations of craftsmen. Alternative theories proposed that the devices served medical purposes, generating mild electrical currents for therapeutic treatment of ailments. Ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian medical texts contained references to treatments involving divine sparks and healing fires that could be directed through metal instruments to relieve pain and promote healing. Some researchers suggested that ancient physicians had developed primitive forms of electrotherapy, using battery-like devices to generate the electrical current necessary for these treatments. The discovery gained additional significance when historians realized that ancient Mesopotamian texts contained references to phenomena that sounded remarkably similar to electrical effects. Cuneiform tablets described rituals involving vessels of power that could make metal objects sing with divine voice when properly prepared. Other texts mentioned crafting techniques that required lightning captured in clay to achieve desired results in metalworking. Modern experiments with replica Baghdad batteries revealed capabilities that extended beyond simple electroplating. When multiple devices were connected in series, they generated sufficient current to power small electronic devices, suggesting that ancient peoples might have developed more complex electrical applications than initially imagined. Some researchers proposed that networks of these batteries could have powered lighting systems in temples and palaces, providing steady illumination without the smoke and flame of traditional torches. The theory gained support from archaeological discoveries of mirror systems and light-conducting devices in ancient Middle Eastern sites, technologies that would have been most effective when combined with artificial lighting sources. Temple complexes at Dendera in Egypt contained intricate mirror arrangements that seemed designed to channel and amplify light through interior chambers, creating illumination systems that could have operated most efficiently with electrical rather than flame-based lighting. Yet skeptics pointed out that no ancient Mesopotamian texts explicitly described electrical phenomena in terms that matched modern understanding. The cultural context of these societies was deeply religious, interpreting natural phenomena through mythological rather than scientific frameworks. What modern observers interpreted as electrical technology might have been understood by ancient peoples as magical or divine processes that operated through spiritual rather than physical principles. This interpretive challenge led to deeper questions about the nature of ancient knowledge itself. Perhaps early civilizations had developed practical technologies without necessarily understanding the scientific principles that made them work. Empirical observation and experimentation could have led to functional devices that operated through forces their creators understood in religious or mystical terms, rather than electrical ones. The Baghdad battery controversy highlighted fundamental questions about technological development and knowledge transmission in ancient societies. If these devices were indeed electrical batteries, their existence suggested that human understanding of electrical phenomena followed a non-linear path, with knowledge appearing, disappearing and reappearing across cultures and centuries in ways that challenged progressive models of technological development. The ancients, observed one researcher, might have touched forces that we're only now learning to understand, approaching electricity not as we do, through theoretical understanding, but through direct interaction with the phenomena themselves. High on the Nazca Plateau of southern Peru, where the Andes Mountains give way to coastal desert and the earth stretches flat and barren toward distant horizons, ancient peoples created artworks that could only be fully appreciated from hundreds of feet above ground level. The Nazca Lines, etched into the desert floor between 500 BC and 500 CE, formed geometric patterns and animal figures so vast and precise that their discovery by modern aviation revealed capabilities that challenged every assumption about ancient transportation and perspective. The lines themselves defied easy categorization. Some stretched perfectly straight for miles across the desert, maintaining directional accuracy that rivaled modern surveying techniques. Others formed complex geometric shapes, spirals, trapezoids, rectangles and triangles that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of mathematical relationships and spatial planning. Most mysteriously, many lines came together to create recognizable images. A spider with legs extending over 150 feet, a hummingbird with a wingspan of over 200 feet, a monkey with a tail that curved through geometric precision across nearly 400 feet of desert floor. The Nazca people who created these monuments lived in a harsh environment where water was scarce, and survival required intimate knowledge of seasonal patterns and agricultural timing. Their pottery depicted images consistent with the ground drawings: spiders, birds, fish, and geometric patterns that seemed to hold religious or astronomical significance. Yet the pottery images were scaled to human perspective, while the ground drawings could only be seen in their entirety from altitudes that should have been impossible for people without flight technology. Swiss author Erich von Däniken famously proposed that the Nazca Lines served as landing strips for ancient astronauts, extraterrestrial visitors who interacted with early human civilizations and were remembered in mythology as gods who descended from the sky. His theory suggested that the straight lines marked runways, while the animal figures served as navigational symbols visible from aircraft approaching the plateau from different directions. Mainstream archaeology rejected the ancient astronaut hypothesis, proposing instead that the Nazca Lines served religious or astronomical purposes that could be planned and executed from ground level using sophisticated but earthbound techniques. Researchers demonstrated that the lines could have been created using simple tools, stakes, ropes, and coordinated teams of workers following pre-planned designs. The geometric precision could be achieved through careful measurement and astronomical observation, while the large animal figures could be created by scaling up smaller designs using mathematical ratios. The most intriguing aspect of the Nazca Lines wasn't their construction technique, but their purpose. Why would ancient peoples invest enormous amounts of time and labour creating artworks that they themselves could never fully see? What practical or spiritual motivation could justify such massive undertakings when resources were scarce and survival was challenging? Archaeological evidence suggested that the Nazca civilization possessed detailed knowledge of astronomy and seasonal patterns. Many of the straight lines aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and the rising positions of important stars and constellations. The culture's survival in the desert environment required precise timing of agricultural activities, and the lines might have served as massive calendar systems, allowing communities to track celestial events and coordinate seasonal activities across vast distances. Yet this explanation didn't fully address the animal figures, which showed no obvious astronomical alignments, but demonstrated artistic sophistication that suggested aesthetic rather than practical purposes. The spider figure, for example, replicated the proportions and anatomical details of a specific species of spider found in the Amazon rainforest, hundreds of miles from the Nazca Plateau. The precision of this representation suggested that Nazca artists had access to detailed knowledge of species from distant ecosystems, raising questions about their geographical knowledge and travel capabilities. More provocative theories emerged when researchers discovered that certain Nazca pottery depicted human figures that appeared to be floating or flying, often associated with textile patterns that resembled parachutes or primitive hot air balloons. Experiments in the 1970s demonstrated that it was possible to construct functional hot air balloons using materials available to ancient Nazca peoples: cotton fabric, reeds for baskets, and fires for generating lift. The Nazca Balloon Project, led by researchers Jim Woodman and Julian Knott, successfully launched a balloon constructed entirely from materials and techniques available to ancient Peruvian peoples. The balloon reached altitudes sufficient to view the ground drawings in their entirety, proving that ancient flight was technically possible and might explain how the Nazca people could have designed and verified their massive artworks. This possibility gained support from textile evidence. Nazca burial sites contained fabric pieces with weave patterns and dye techniques so sophisticated that some specimens were initially misidentified as modern materials. The textiles displayed understanding of aerodynamic principles, tight weaves that could hold air pressure, reinforcement patterns that distributed stress efficiently, and design elements that seemed optimized for atmospheric exposure rather than ground-based use. Indigenous oral traditions from the region contained references to ancestors who could speak with the sky people and travel on wind roads to communicate with distant communities. These stories described rituals involving fire, smoke, and specially prepared fabrics that allowed chosen individuals to rise above the earth and view the world from celestial perspectives. While such accounts could be interpreted as purely mythological, their consistency across different Andean cultures suggested possible historical basis in actual flight experiences. The implications extended beyond simple transportation. If ancient Nazca peoples had developed flight technology, their worldview would have included perspectives that European civilizations wouldn't achieve until the 20th century. They would have understood geography, weather patterns, and spatial relationships from three-dimensional viewpoints that informed their art, their agriculture, and their spiritual understanding of humanity's place in the natural world. Modern analysis of the Nazca Lines using satellite imagery and computer modelling revealed additional mysteries. Some lines extended beyond the visible plateau, continuing underneath more recent geological formations in patterns that suggested the original earthworks were even more extensive than previously realised. The precision of these extended patterns implied master planning that coordinated multiple construction sites across vast distances, requiring communication and organisational capabilities that challenged assumptions about ancient Peruvian social structures. Perhaps the Nazca Lines were never meant to be seen by human eyes alone, one researcher observed, but were intended as offerings to sky spirits, messages written in earth for gods who travelled on paths of wind and starlight. The mystery of the Nazca Lines represented more than questions about ancient technology. It challenged fundamental assumptions about human consciousness and capability. Whether created through extraterrestrial contact, primitive flight technology, or spiritual practices that transcended physical limitations, these monuments suggested that ancient peoples experienced reality through perspectives that modern civilization was only beginning to rediscover through aviation and space exploration. In 1929, while cataloguing manuscripts in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, scholars discovered a map that would challenge everything historians thought they knew about ancient geographical knowledge. The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, displayed coastal features of South America and Antarctica with accuracy that shouldn't have been possible using 16th century exploration data. Most remarkably, the map showed Antarctica without ice cover, depicting geographical features that wouldn't be rediscovered until the 20th century. Piri Reis had noted on his map that he compiled it from various sources, including charts captured from Christopher Columbus and maps that dated back to Alexander the Great's time. He claimed that some of his source materials were based on even older maps, documents that preserved geographical knowledge from antiquity. The resulting composite showed not only the known coastlines of his era, but coastal features and land masses that European explorers hadn't yet discovered. The Antarctic portion of the map proved most controversial. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, 3 centuries after Piri Reis created his chart. Moreover, the continent had been covered by ice for thousands of years before any recorded human civilization. Yet the Piri Reis map showed Antarctic coastal features that matched the underlying land formation beneath the ice sheet, details that weren't confirmed until seismic surveys and ground-penetrating radar revealed the continent's hidden topography in the 1950s. The mathematical projection used in the Piri Reis map demonstrated sophisticated understanding of spherical geometry. The map employed a projection that accurately represented the curvature of the Earth as viewed from a point in space above Egypt, a perspective that suggested knowledge of the planet's spherical nature and advanced mathematical techniques for representing three-dimensional surfaces on flat planes. Charles Hapgood, a professor of history at Keene State College, spent decades analysing the Piri Reis map and similar anomalous charts from the medieval period. His research revealed a pattern of geographical accuracy that suggested ancient civilizations had possessed sophisticated mapping capabilities, including knowledge of longitude calculation that European navigators wouldn't master until the development of accurate chronometers in the 18th century. Hapgood's analysis indicated that the ancient source maps used by Piri Reis had been compiled by navigators who could determine their position on the Earth's surface with precision matching modern satellite-based systems. The mathematical accuracy of coastal outlines and the correct positioning of islands and peninsulas implied use of triangulation techniques and astronomical observation methods that supposedly hadn't been developed until the Renaissance. The implications extended beyond simple navigation technology. If ancient peoples had possessed accurate maps of Antarctica before it became ice-covered, they must have had access to that continent during a period when its climate was significantly warmer than in recorded history. Geological evidence suggested that parts of Antarctica had been ice-free as recently as 4000 BCE, but conventional archaeology placed no advanced civilizations in the southern hemisphere during that period. Similar anomalies appeared in other ancient and medieval maps. The Oronteus Phineus map of 1531 showed Antarctica as two land masses separated by a channel, a geographical feature that modern ice-penetrating radar confirmed existed beneath the current ice sheet. The Mercator map of 1569 included Antarctic rivers and mountains in positions that matched the continent's sub-ice topography. These consistencies across different cartographers suggested that all were drawing from common ancient sources that preserved remarkably accurate geographical information. The accuracy extended to other continents as well. Ancient maps showed coastal features of the Americas with precision that suggested systematic exploration and surveying long before European contact. Some charts included Caribbean islands in correct positions relative to mainland coastlines, while others showed river systems and inland geographical features that would have required extensive inland exploration to document accurately. Mainstream historians argued that the apparent accuracy of these maps resulted from lucky guesswork, artistic interpretation, or later modifications by scholars who had access to more recent geographical discoveries. They pointed out that many ancient maps also contained obvious errors and fantastical elements that demonstrated their creators' limited geographical knowledge. The accurate portions might represent isolated pieces of correct information embedded in largely speculative cartography. Yet proponents of ancient advanced cartography noted that the errors in these maps often involved regions that were geographically unstable or had changed significantly since antiquity due to earthquakes, volcanic activity, or climate changes. The accurate portions typically represented coastlines and major geographical features that had remained stable over millennia, suggesting that the original surveys had been conducted during periods when these features were accessible and accurately observable. The mathematical sophistication of the projections used in some ancient maps suggested knowledge of spherical trigonometry and astronomical calculation that paralleled modern navigation techniques. The Piri-Reis map's projection required understanding of the Earth's rotation, its axial tilt, and the relationship between celestial observations and terrestrial position, concepts that wouldn't be formally mathematized in European science until the work of Johannes Kepler and other Renaissance astronomers. The ancients navigated by stars, observed one cartographic historian, but perhaps they understood those stars in ways we have forgotten, not just as points of light, but as part of a cosmic navigation system that revealed the Earth's secrets to those who knew how to read the sky. The preservation of accurate geographical knowledge across thousands of years suggested the existence of institutions or traditions dedicated to maintaining and transmitting scientific information through periods of cultural upheaval and civilizational collapse. The consistency of cartographic accuracy across different cultures and time periods implied networks of knowledge exchange that connected ancient civilizations in ways not reflected in conventional historical records. Modern attempts to recreate ancient navigation techniques revealed that many of the capabilities demonstrated in anomalous ancient maps were theoretically possible, using sophisticated applications of astronomical observation and mathematical calculation. Polynesian navigators had demonstrated the ability to cross vast ocean distances using only celestial observation and understanding of wave patterns, suggesting that ancient peoples could have developed navigation technologies that matched or exceeded the accuracy of early European maritime exploration. The mystery of ancient cartographic accuracy ultimately raised questions about the continuity of human knowledge and the possibility that technological and scientific capabilities had developed in non-linear ways throughout history. The maps suggested that ancient civilizations might have achieved understanding of geography and navigation that was subsequently lost during periods of cultural disruption, only to be gradually rediscovered through later exploration and scientific development. As scholars continued to analyse these cartographic anomalies, the evidence pointed toward possibilities that challenged comfortable assumptions about technological progress and human capability, whether through advanced ancient civilizations, lost knowledge traditions, or contact with external sources of information. The maps preserved geographical understanding that suggested humanity's relationship with the Earth was far more complex and sophisticated in antiquity than conventional history. All had recognised. The lines drawn on parchment and papyrus trace not only coastlines and mountain ranges, but pathways through time itself, connections between what was known, what was lost, and what waited to be rediscovered by minds willing to see beyond the boundaries of conventional possibility. In the precision of these ancient coordinates lay whispers of civilizations that had gazed upon the world from perspectives we were only beginning to understand, their knowledge preserved in symbols and measurements that continued to challenge every assumption about humanity's journey through. The crystal skulls rest in their climate-controlled chambers, 13 fragments of impossibility scattered across museums and private collections like breadcrumbs from a feast the world has forgotten how to taste. Each one carved from a single piece of quartz, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like perfection that should have been beyond the reach of any ancient civilization's tools. Yet here they remain, silent witnesses to a mastery that conventional archaeology cannot explain, their hollow eye sockets seeming to hold the weight of millennia in their crystalline depths. The most famous among them, housed in the British Museum, was once believed to be Aztec in origin, a skull that could speak prophecies when the moon was full, according to the legends that followed it from the jungles of Mexico to the fog-shrouded halls of London. But modern analysis reveals a truth more troubling than any ancient curse. The microscopic tool mark suggests cutting techniques that did not exist until the Industrial Age. Yet carbon dating of organic inclusions within the crystal speaks of ages far more ancient than recorded civilization. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the museum guards walk their solitary rounds, some claim to hear a sound like distant singing emanating from the crystal skull's display case. Not the crude chanting of primitive rituals, but something more refined, harmonies that seem to resonate not just in the air, but in the very structure of the building itself, as if the skull remembers a time when stone and crystal and human voice were part of a single unified language that civilization has since forgotten how to speak. The mystery deepens when we consider the technical impossibility of their creation. Modern attempts to carve similar skulls from single pieces of quartz, even with industrial diamond-tipped tools and computer-guided precision, have failed to achieve the same seamless perfection. The ancient artisans, whoever they were, somehow worked against the natural grain of the crystal without causing fractures, creating internal structures that seem to follow the mathematical principles of acoustics and optics that were not formally understood until centuries later. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a material scientist who has spent decades studying crystalline structures, speaks of the skulls with a mixture of professional fascination and something approaching reverence. What we're looking at, she explains in hushed tones, is not just superior craftsmanship, it's evidence of a completely different understanding of how matter and consciousness interact. The internal structure of these skulls creates resonance chambers that can amplify and focus electromagnetic fields in ways that suggest their creators understood principles of quantum mechanics that we're only beginning to rediscover. The legend speaks of 13 original skulls, each one holding a fragment of humanity's true history, a history that predates the rise and fall of all known civilizations. According to the oral traditions passed down through generations of indigenous keepers, when all 13 skulls are brought together and properly activated through ritual and song, they will reveal the location of a vast library of crystalline records that contains the accumulated knowledge of a race that achieved technological and spiritual advancement beyond anything the modern world has imagined. 7 of the skulls have been found and documented, their authenticity debated, but their inexplicable properties undeniable. Each one exhibits unique characteristics. One generates measurable electromagnetic fields that follow the phases of the moon. Another maintains a constant internal temperature regardless of external conditions, and a third produces ultrasonic frequencies that affect the brainwave patterns of anyone who spends extended time in its presence, inducing vivid dreams filled with images of towering crystal cities and beings of pure light who communicate through colour and harmonic resonance. The remaining 6 skulls exist in the realm of legend and fevered pursuit. Treasure hunters and archaeologists have spent lifetimes following clues carved into temple walls in Cambodia, hidden in the mathematical structures of Mayan calendars, and encrypted within the symbolic languages of alchemical texts from medieval Europe. Each clue points to the same impossible conclusion. These artifacts are not the product of any single ancient culture, but remnants of a global civilization that existed before the last ice age. A civilization that achieved a level of integration between consciousness and crystal technology that we are only beginning to understand. The skulls seem to exist in a state of patient waiting, their crystal matrices holding charge like living batteries that neither gain nor lose energy over time. This has led some researchers to theorize that they are not merely artifacts, but active components in a vast information storage and transmission system. A crystalline internet that once connected the minds and technologies of an advanced race across continents and perhaps even across dimensions of reality that modern physics can barely conceptualize. In the Amazon basin, shamans of the Kayapo tribe maintain traditional songs that they claim were taught to their ancestors by the crystal beings, luminous entities who emerged from the forest carrying skulls of living light. These songs, when performed in the presence of any genuine crystal skull, produce visible alterations in the skull's internal structure, causing patterns of light to move through the crystal like slow lightning, creating mandala-like formations that mirror the geometric patterns found in sacred sites around the world. The implications stretch beyond archaeology, into the realm of consciousness research and quantum mechanics. If the legends are true, if these skulls are indeed components of an ancient information system that transcends the limitations of linear time and three-dimensional space, then their rediscovery may represent humanity's first step toward reconnecting with a level of awareness and capability that our species possessed long before the rise of agriculture, writing, and the technological civilization that we mistake for the pinnacle of human achievement. In a storage room beneath the National Museum of Iraq, wrapped in protective cloth and surrounded by climate monitors, lies a collection of clay tablets that should not exist. The Plimpton 322 tablet, dating to approximately 1800 BCE, contains mathematical calculations that demonstrate a complete understanding of Pythagorean relationships more than 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. But this revelation, startling as it is, represents only the beginning of a deeper mystery embedded in the mathematical knowledge of ancient Babylon. The cuneiform markings etched into these ancient clay surfaces reveal calculation systems of staggering sophistication. Babylonian mathematicians were working with concepts of infinity, complex algebraic relationships, and geometric principles that would not be formally recognized by Western mathematics until the Renaissance. Their number system, based on powers of 60 rather than 10, allowed for calculations of astronomical precision that enabled them to predict celestial events with an accuracy that rivals modern computer models. But the true mystery lies not in what these tablets contain, but in how such advanced mathematical knowledge could have emerged from a civilization that mainstream archaeology characterizes as relatively primitive. The mathematical principles embedded in these clay records suggest access to a system of knowledge that took European civilization nearly 3 millennia to redevelop, implying either that human intellectual capacity was far greater in ancient times, or that these civilizations had access to information sources that have since been lost to history. Professor Michael Harrison, a mathematician who has spent years decoding ancient numerical systems, speaks of his work with a mixture of excitement and bewilderment. "We're not looking at the gradual development of mathematical concepts," he explains, his voice carrying the weight of implications he's only beginning to understand. These tablets show complete, fully formed systems appearing suddenly in the historical record, as if someone simply sat down and wrote out the fundamental principles of advanced mathematics without any apparent developmental process. The Antikythera mechanism, pulled from the Mediterranean depths and corroded bronze fragments that took decades to decode, tells a similar story of impossible sophistication. This ancient Greek device, dating to approximately 100 BCE, is essentially a mechanical computer capable of calculating and predicting the movements of celestial bodies with precision that would not be matched again until the development of modern astronomical instruments. Its gear systems demonstrate an understanding of differential mechanics that historians claim was not developed until the Industrial Revolution. Inside the mechanism's bronze housing, archaeologists discovered gear ratios that precisely match the orbital periods of planets, the cycles of solar and lunar eclipses, and the complex interactions between multiple celestial bodies. The device could predict the timing of Olympic Games, track the phases of the moon, and calculate the positions of planets years into the future. Its creator understood concepts of mechanical engineering and astronomical mathematics that suggest access to observational data and computational methods that should have been impossible given the technological limitations of the ancient world. The mystery deepens when we consider that this device was not unique. References in ancient texts suggest that similar mechanisms were relatively common among educated Greeks and Romans, used for navigation, agricultural planning, and religious ceremonies that required precise timing with celestial events. Yet no other examples have survived intact, leaving us with tantalizing glimpses of a lost technology that vanished so completely that even its memory was eventually forgotten. In the Vatican secret archives, behind locked doors that few scholars ever see opened, lie mathematical treatises that were confiscated during the Inquisition, documents that demonstrate advanced understanding of concepts that would not be formally recognised by academic institutions for centuries. These manuscripts, written by scholars who were subsequently executed as heretics, contain proofs of mathematical principles that modern education attributes to much later periods of scientific development. One particularly controversial document, known only through fragmentary copies that survived the systematic destruction, presents a complete geometric proof that P is not only irrational, but exists in a mathematical relationship with the golden ratio that suggests both numbers are components of a larger numerical system that governs the structure of physical reality at quantum scales. The mathematician who developed this proof was burned at the stake in 1347, his work condemned as an attempt to reduce God's creation to mere numbers. The suppression of mathematical knowledge during the medieval period created artificial dark ages in human understanding, but fragments of the suppressed knowledge survived in coded form within alchemical texts, architectural blueprints, and religious manuscripts. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe embody mathematical principles that their builders could not have formally understood according to conventional historical timelines, yet the structures themselves demonstrate mastery of acoustic engineering, structural dynamics, and geometric relationships that create measurable effects on human consciousness and physical well-being. Modern visitors to Chartres Cathedral often report experiences of heightened awareness and emotional transformation that seem connected to the mathematical proportions embedded in the building's design. The cathedral's dimensions create natural harmonic resonances that affect brainwave patterns, while its geometric relationships generate electromagnetic field variations that some researchers believe enhance intuitive and creative thinking processes. These effects suggest that the medieval builders understood principles of consciousness research and biophysics that are only now being rediscovered by mainstream science. The lost mathematical knowledge encompasses more than abstract numerical concepts. Ancient texts describe computational methods for predicting weather patterns decades in advance, calculating the optimal timing for agricultural activities based on solar and planetary cycles, and developing medicines through mathematical analysis of chemical interactions that would not be formally understood until the development of modern pharmacology. This practical application of advanced mathematics suggests that ancient civilizations possessed integrated systems of knowledge that combined scientific understanding with direct application to improve human life in ways that modern compartmentalized academic disciplines struggle to match. The Delhi iron pillar stands in quiet defiance of everything modern metallurgy understands about the behaviour of iron in atmospheric conditions. For over 16 centuries, this towering column of metal has remained virtually free of corrosion, its surface bearing only the patina of time and the touch of countless hands that have reached out to feel the smoothness of iron that refuses to rust. Modern attempts to recreate the pillar's metallurgical properties have failed despite access to industrial furnaces, computer-controlled alloy mixing, and precision manufacturing techniques that far exceed anything available to ancient smiths. The pillar weighs more than 6 tons and rises 23 feet into the Delhi sky, cast as a single seamless piece that shows no evidence of welding, joining, or assembly. Laboratory analysis reveals an iron purity of 99.72%, achieved through smelting techniques that contemporary metallurgists cannot replicate. The metal contains trace amounts of phosphorus distributed in microscopic layers throughout the pillar's structure, creating a protective coating that actually strengthens over time, rather than weakening as conventional iron would under similar environmental conditions. But the Delhi pillar is not unique in its impossible properties. In museums and archaeological sites around the world, examples of ancient metallurgy continue to puzzle researchers who cannot explain how civilizations with apparently primitive technologies created metal objects that demonstrate understanding of molecular chemistry, crystalline structures, and alloy relationships that were not formally discovered until the 20th century. In the basement of the National Archaeological Museum in Lima, Peru, sits a collection of pre-Columbian metal artifacts that challenge every assumption about the technological capabilities of ancient American civilizations. Among these objects is a ceremonial knife with a blade that maintains its edge, despite being over 1,000 years old, its metal composition revealing an alloy of copper, tin, and trace elements that creates a molecular structure modern material science cannot duplicate. Dr. Roberto Sanchez, the museum's chief metallurgist, speaks of these artifacts with the careful precision of a scientist who has learned to question his own foundational assumptions. What we're seeing here is not just advanced metallurgy, he explains, handling the ancient knife with gloved hands that still tremble slightly with the weight of implications he's spent decades trying to understand. These metal compositions demonstrate knowledge of atomic structures and molecular bonding that suggests these ancient smiths understood the fundamental nature of matter at levels that we're only beginning to explore with electron microscopy and quantum chemistry. The knife's blade edge, when examined under high-powered magnification, reveals a crystalline structure that aligns at the molecular level to create a cutting surface that actually becomes sharper with use. The metal's composition includes trace amounts of elements that should not have been available to pre-Columbian civilizations, rare earth metals that require complex extraction processes, and materials that are found only in meteorites or created in high-energy physics laboratories. Similar mysteries emerge from ancient sites across Asia, where archaeologists have discovered metal objects that seem to exist outside the normal progression of technological development. In a tomb near Xi'an, China, researchers found a set of bronze mirrors dating to the Han Dynasty that possess reflective properties superior to modern silverback mirrors. The bronze alloy contains precise percentages of tin, copper and nickel that create a surface capable of reflecting not just visible light, but infrared and ultraviolet wavelengths with minimal distortion. The manufacturing process required to create such mirrors would have demanded temperature control within fractions of degrees, atmospheric conditions that prevented oxidation during cooling, and timing precision measured in seconds rather than minutes. Ancient Chinese metallurgists somehow achieved these conditions using techniques that left no trace in the historical record, no written instructions, and no intermediate examples showing the development of such sophisticated processes. In the British Museum's storage facilities, carefully preserved in inert gas environments, lie fragments of Roman steel that contain carbon percentages and molecular structures identical to modern high-grade surgical instruments. These metal fragments, recovered from military sites across the former Roman Empire, demonstrate consistent quality and composition that would have required industrial-scale quality control systems and standardized manufacturing processes that conventional history claims were not developed until the Industrial Revolution. The steel fragments show evidence of heat treatment processes that required precise temperature cycling, controlled atmospheric conditions, and timing sequences that would have demanded understanding of the metallurgical chemistry at the molecular level. Roman smiths were somehow creating steel alloys that modern foundries reproduce using computer-controlled furnaces, continuous monitoring systems, and automated processes that eliminate human error from the manufacturing equation. Perhaps most mysterious of all are the metal objects that seem to demonstrate properties that border on the supernatural. In various private collections and obscure museum storage rooms, researchers have documented ancient metal artifacts that exhibit electromagnetic properties, maintain constant temperatures regardless of environmental conditions, and show signs of self-repair when damaged. One such object, a small figurine of unknown origin that has passed through the hands of collectors for over a century, appears to be composed of an alloy that includes elements not found on the periodic table. Spectral analysis reveals emission signatures that do not match any known atomic structures, while the figurine itself maintains a temperature of exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of external conditions, the same temperature as the human body. The figurine shows signs of what can only be described as growth over time. Careful measurements taken by successive owners reveal that the object has been gradually increasing in size and mass, without any apparent external source of additional material. This suggests either that the metal is somehow converting energy directly into matter, or that it exists in a state of reality that allows it to draw material from sources that three-dimensional physics cannot detect or measure. These impossible metals challenge not only our understanding of ancient technological capabilities, but our fundamental assumptions about the nature of matter itself. If ancient civilizations possessed knowledge of metallurgy that included manipulation of atomic structures, transmutation of elements, and creation of alloys with properties that modern science considers impossible, then the technological gap between ancient and modern civilizations may be far smaller than we imagine, or perhaps the gap runs in the opposite direction, with ancient knowledge representing a technological sophistication that modern industrial civilization has yet to achieve. The implications extend beyond archaeology into realms of physics and consciousness research that challenge the boundaries between science and what we have learned to dismiss as magic. If matter can be manipulated through understanding of its fundamental nature at quantum levels, if consciousness and intention can influence the behavior of atomic structures, then these ancient metal artifacts may represent evidence of a science that integrated the observer effect and quantum consciousness in ways that current materialist paradigms cannot accommodate or explain. In the quiet halls where these metal mysteries wait in their climate-controlled cases, surrounded by security systems and scholarly caution, they continue to pose questions that pierce through layers of assumption and dogma to touch the fundamental mysteries of existence itself. Each artifact stands as a silent challenge to the linear progression of human knowledge, suggesting that the path of discovery may be far more circular than we have imagined, with destinations that are simultaneously ancient wisdom and future understanding converging in moments of recognition that feel less like learning and more like remembering what we have always known but temporarily forgotten. Across the wind-swept plateau of Nazca, where the desert preserves secrets in its endless expanse of stone and sand, lies a gallery of impossible art that can only be fully perceived from heights that ancient peoples supposedly could never reach. The lines and figures etched into the desert floor span an area of nearly 200 square miles. Their geometric precision and artistic sophistication requiring aerial perspective to appreciate their full meaning and mathematical relationships. The hummingbird stretches 165 feet from beak to tail, its proportions perfect, its lines unwavering, despite being created by removing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter desert floor beneath. The spider, the monkey, the whale, each figure demonstrates anatomical knowledge that suggests intimate familiarity with creatures that did not exist in the Nazca region during the time period when the lines were created. How did ancient artists capture the precise proportions of a whale in a desert that lies hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean? But the representational figures, striking as they are, constitute only a small portion of the Nazca phenomenon. The majority of the lines form geometric patterns of stunning complexity, trapezoids that span several miles, spirals that follow mathematical progressions found in nature, and straight lines that run for dozens of miles across varied terrain, while maintaining precision that would challenge modern surveying equipment. Some of these lines are so perfectly straight that they maintain their trajectory despite crossing valleys, climbing hills, and spanning obstacles that should have interrupted any ground-based construction process. Dr. Maria Reiche, the German mathematician who devoted her life to studying and preserving the Nazca Lines, spent decades walking the desert floor with measuring instruments, maps, and a growing sense of awe at the mathematical sophistication embedded in the patterns. Her calculations revealed that the lines incorporate geometric relationships based on principles of sacred geometry, astronomical alignments, and mathematical constants that suggest their creators possessed advanced understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. The most mysterious aspect of the Nazca Lines may be their apparent connection to underground water sources. Modern hydrological surveys reveal that many of the lines run directly above subterranean rivers and aquifers, following watercourses that cannot be detected from the surface without sophisticated geological equipment. This suggests that the ancient creators could perceive underground water flows, perhaps through techniques of earth sensing that have been lost to modern civilization. The water connection becomes more intriguing when we consider the spiral-shaped wells, called puquios, that the Nazca people constructed to tap into underground water sources. These wells demonstrate engineering principles that modern hydrologists struggle to understand. Curved tunnels that create airflow patterns that maintain the well's function for centuries without human maintenance, and water collection systems that seem to actually increase the flow of underground springs rather than depleting them. Similar mysteries emerge from other ancient sites where massive ground drawings have been discovered through aerial photography. In Britain, the Uffington White Horse stretches across a hillside in flowing lines that capture the essence of movement despite being composed of static trenches filled with white chalk. The figure has maintained its clear visibility for over 3,000 years, requiring periodic maintenance that local communities have provided generation after generation, driven by an instinctive understanding that this ancient artwork must be preserved. The Uffington Horse, like the Nazca Lines, can only be properly appreciated from an elevated perspective, yet it was created during a time when human flight was supposedly impossible. The artistic vision required to design and execute such large-scale ground drawings suggests either that ancient peoples possessed methods of aerial observation that have been lost to history, or that they worked from detailed plans that were developed through some other means of perceiving large-scale spatial relationships. Across the Atlantic, in the American Midwest, archaeologists have mapped enormous earthwork complexes that rival the Nazca Lines in scale and exceed them in architectural sophistication. The Serpent Mound in Ohio undulates across 138 feet of hilltop terrain in the precise form of a serpent with an egg in its mouth, its curves following contours that create astronomical alignments marking the summer and winter solstices, while simultaneously conforming to the natural topography in ways that seem to enhance the landscape's inherent energy patterns. Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, once housed the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, centered around Monk's Mound, a stepped pyramid larger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The city was laid out according to mathematical principles that incorporated astronomical alignments, cardinal directions, and proportional relationships that created a vast architectural mandala stretching across hundreds of acres. The complexity of Cahokia's urban planning suggests a level of social organization and mathematical knowledge that challenges conventional understanding of Native American civilizations. The city's layout included precise astronomical observatories, water management systems that controlled flooding across thousands of acres, and architectural features that demonstrate understanding of acoustics, structural engineering, and environmental science that would not be formally recognized by European-descended civilizations for centuries. Perhaps most intriguing are the numerous reports of electromagnetic anomalies associated with these large-scale ground drawings. Visitors to Nazca often report compass malfunctions, radio interference, and unusual electromagnetic readings that seem to correlate with proximity to the lines themselves. Similar phenomena have been documented at other ancient earthwork sites, suggesting that these constructions may have been designed to interact with natural electromagnetic fields in ways that we do not yet understand. The patterns created by these ancient earthworks often incorporate geometric relationships that appear in sacred sites around the world, suggesting the existence of a universal design language that transcended individual cultures and geographic boundaries. The same proportional relationships found in the Nazca spirals appear in Celtic stone circles, Native American medicine wheels, and Aboriginal songline paths across Australia, implying shared knowledge systems that connected ancient civilizations in ways that conventional archaeology has yet to recognize or explain. These massive ground drawings represent more than artistic expression or religious symbolism. They constitute a form of environmental art that works with natural landscape features to create spaces where human consciousness and natural forces interact in ways that affect perception, awareness, and spiritual experience. Walking the lines of these ancient constructions many visitors report altered states of consciousness, enhanced intuitive awareness, and profound emotional experiences that suggest these sites were designed to serve as gateways to expanded perception and deeper understanding of humanity's relationship with the natural world. The preservation of these earthworks across centuries and millennia, despite exposure to weather, natural disasters, and human interference, suggests construction techniques that created structures far more durable than their apparent simplicity would indicate. The lines maintain their integrity through freeze-thaw cycles, floods, earthquakes, and erosion that have destroyed much more recent constructions, implying engineering knowledge that included deep understanding of geological processes, materials science, and environmental factors that affect long-term structural stability. In the end, these vast ground drawings stand as monuments to human vision that transcended the limitations of individual perspective. Their creators somehow developed the ability to conceive, plan, and execute artistic and architectural projects that could only be fully appreciated from vantage points that they could not physically occupy, suggesting either technological capabilities that have been lost to history or consciousness abilities that allowed them to perceive spatial relationships through means that modern psychology and neuroscience have yet to understand or acknowledge. The crystal lens catches the morning light differently than it should, refracting not just illumination, but something deeper. Time itself seems to bend around its impossible edges. In the laboratory of Dr. Elena Vasquez, surrounded by the sterile hum of modern equipment, this ancient artifact defies every law of optics known to contemporary science. The lens, no larger than a child's palm, was recovered from beneath the ruins of what archaeologists believe to be a Pre-Columbian observatory in the highlands of Peru, yet its construction suggests a mastery of light manipulation that shouldn't have existed until the Renaissance, if then. Through the lens, distant mountains appear not as they are, but as they were. The snow-capped peaks shimmer with the heat of volcanic activity that ceased millennia ago. Forests that vanished before the first human settlements stretch green and vast across valleys, now carved by rivers that have changed course a dozen times. The lens doesn't merely magnify, it reveals layers of time, peeling back the centuries like pages in an ancient book written in light itself. The site where the lens was discovered tells its own story of impossibility. High in the Andes, at an altitude that leaves modern climbers gasping for breath, ancient builders carved an observatory from living rock with precision that rivals contemporary engineering. The structure aligns perfectly with celestial events that occur only once every 25,000 years. Alignments that require not just astronomical knowledge, but an understanding of precession that wasn't officially recognized by Western science until the 18th century. Yet here, carved in stone by hands that worked before the last ice age ended, are calculations that map the dance of stars across epochs. The observatory's central chamber, where the lens was found, contains a series of mirrors made from polished obsidian, each positioned to capture light from specific stars at precise moments throughout the year. When the lens is placed in its apparent original position, these mirrors create a complex optical system that projects images of impossible clarity and detail. The indigenous peoples of the region speak of the Watchers of Time, astronomers who could see into the past and future with equal clarity. Their oral traditions describe the building of the observatory as a collaborative effort between the living and those who had passed beyond, guided by visions that came through the sacred lens. According to these stories, the lens was not created by human hands at all, but found in the heart of a mountain that split open during an earthquake, revealing a chamber filled with objects that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Time flows like water through the sacred stone, and those who learn to cup their hands just so can drink from any stream they choose. Modern analysis of the lens reveals materials that don't match any known mineral composition. The crystal structure appears to contain elements that exist in theory, but have never been observed in nature. Isotopes that should be unstable, yet remain perfectly preserved. X-ray crystallography shows patterns that repeat at scales both microscopic and macroscopic, creating a fractal structure that seems to fold space as much as it focuses light. When researchers attempted to recreate the lens using modern techniques, they discovered that the original's optical properties couldn't be replicated. Every synthetic crystal, no matter how precisely manufactured, produces only conventional magnification and refraction. The ancient lens, however, continues to show its impossible visions, glimpses of the world as it was thousands of years ago, or as it might become in futures yet undetermined. Miles from the observatory, across landscapes that seem carved by the hands of giants, stand the singing stones of Tiahuanaco. These massive blocks of andesite and sandstone, fitted together with joints so precise that not even a knife blade can slip between them, produce harmonic resonances that defy acoustic explanation. When the wind passes through the ruins at certain times of day, the stones emit tones that form complex musical patterns, songs without singers, melodies carved in rock. The acoustic properties of these stones were discovered by accident in 1972, when a sound engineer working on a documentary about ancient civilizations noticed that his recording equipment was picking up tones that seemed to have no source. Further investigation revealed that the stones themselves were vibrating at frequencies that corresponded to musical intervals, creating harmonies that shifted with the temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure. What makes the singing stones truly mysterious is not just their ability to produce music, but the sophistication of that music itself. Acoustic analysis reveals that the tones follow mathematical progressions that weren't formally described by the Western music theory until the 20th century. The stones seem to be tuned to frequencies that resonate with human brain waves, particularly those associated with deep meditation and altered states of consciousness. Local traditions describe the stones as having been shaped not by tools, but by sound itself. According to these accounts, the ancient builders possessed knowledge of sonic techniques that could soften rock like clay, allowing massive blocks to be moulded by pure vibration. While modern science dismisses such claims as mythological, researchers have noted that the acoustic properties of the stones suggest they were indeed designed to resonate, and that their current arrangement may be only a fragment of a much larger sonic system. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers played recordings of the stones' songs to modern musicians. Without being told anything about the source of the music, every musician independently described the recordings as sounding ancient and otherworldly. More intriguingly, several composers who listened to the stones' songs reported having vivid dreams of vast cities built from living stone, where architecture and music were indistinguishable from each other. Beneath the blue waters of the Mediterranean, where ancient ships once carried treasures between distant ports, lies the wreck that yielded perhaps the most confounding artifact of all, the Antikythera mechanism. This bronze device, corroded and broken by centuries of salt water, revealed itself through painstaking reconstruction to be a computer of impossible sophistication, created by hands that worked 2,000 years before the digital age. The mechanism's gears, some no larger than a coin, are arranged in combinations that calculate the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with accuracy that rivals modern astronomical tables. The device can predict eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and chart the wandering paths of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn across the sky. Its construction requires not just mathematical knowledge, but mechanical precision that wasn't thought to exist until the Renaissance. When the first fragments of the mechanism were discovered in 1901, they were dismissed as part of a more recent shipwreck that had somehow become mixed with ancient cargo. The idea that Greek craftsmen of the 1st century BCE could have created such a device was simply too far-fetched to consider seriously. It wasn't until detailed X-ray analysis in the 1970s revealed the true complexity of the gearing system that historians began to confront the implications of what they had found. The mechanism's creator remains unknown, though some scholars believe it may have been built in the workshops of Rhodes, where the mathematician Hipparchus developed theories of celestial mechanics that wouldn't be fully understood again until the time of Kepler. Others suggest connections to the legendary Library of Alexandria, where the greatest minds of the ancient world gathered to push the boundaries of human knowledge. What makes the Antikythera mechanism truly mysterious is not just its complexity, but its apparent uniqueness. If such sophisticated mechanical knowledge existed in the ancient world, why haven't other examples been found? Why did this technology apparently disappear, leaving no trace in the historical record until mechanical clocks appeared in medieval Europe? The device stands alone, a single glimpse of what might have been a golden age of ancient engineering that history has forgotten. In the clicking of bronze gears lies the heartbeat of a world that knew more than it told, and told more than we remember. Above the high desert plateau of Peru, where the earth stretches flat and endless beneath an impossibly blue sky, ancient artists drew pictures that can only be seen from the air. The Nazca Lines stretch across nearly 200 square miles of desert, their geometric precision and massive scale creating one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. These are not merely drawings, but a complex system of lines, shapes, and figures that seem to map relationships between earth and sky in ways that the modern science is only beginning to understand. The lines themselves are created by removing the dark, oxidized rocks from the desert surface, revealing the lighter coloured sand beneath. This simple technique, executed with extraordinary precision, has preserved the figures for over 1,000 years. The largest of the geoglyphs spans nearly 1,000 feet from end to end, requiring coordination and planning on a scale that challenges assumptions about the organisational capabilities of pre-Columbian civilizations. From ground level, the lines appear as nothing more than shallow trenches in the desert floor. It's only from the air that their true purpose becomes apparent, or at least more mysterious. The straight lines converge on points that seem to have astronomical significance, aligning with the positions of various celestial bodies at specific times of year. The animal figures, hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys and condors, are drawn with an anatomical accuracy that suggests intimate knowledge of these creatures' forms and behaviours. What makes the Nazca Lines truly puzzling is their apparent creation for an aerial perspective that the Nazca people supposedly couldn't achieve. The conventional wisdom holds that pre-Columbian civilizations had no means of flight, yet these massive figures are clearly designed to be viewed from above. Some researchers have suggested that the Nazca people may have developed primitive hot air balloons, using techniques that allowed them to rise above their desert canvas and survey their work. Evidence for this theory includes the discovery of ancient textiles with weaving patterns tight enough to hold hot air, as well as burn sites that could have been used for balloon launches. More intriguingly, indigenous traditions speak of ceremonies in which specially trained priests would rise into the sky to commune with the gods and receive visions of the future. These accounts describe the use of specially woven fabrics and sacred fires that could lift the spirit walkers into the realm of the condors. Recent analysis of the lines using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar has revealed that the visible geoglyphs are only part of a much larger system. Beneath the surface, additional lines and patterns extend the network across an even greater area, suggesting that the Nazca Lines were part of a complex ceremonial landscape that integrated astronomy, geography, and spiritual practice in ways that modern cultures rarely attempt. In the mountain archives of Peru, carefully preserved in climate-controlled chambers, rest bundles of knotted strings that once held the secrets of an empire. These quipu, the recording devices of the Inca, represent a form of information storage that challenges Western assumptions about literacy and record-keeping. Made from how cotton or wool or dyed in colours that held symbolic meaning, and arranged in patterns of knots and spacing that encoded complex data, the quipu were the books of a civilization that supposedly had no written language. The Spanish conquistadors who encountered the quipu in the 16th century recognized immediately that these devices held important information. Inca administrators could read them like books, extracting data about tribute payments, population censuses, astronomical observations and historical records. Yet despite centuries of study, modern scholars have been able to decode only the most basic numerical information from the quipu, leaving their true complexity locked in knots that no longer speak. What makes the quipu particularly mysterious is the sophistication of the information they apparently contained. Spanish chroniclers describe quipu masters who could recite epic poems, legal codes and detailed histories simply by reading the patterns of knots and colours. Some quipu seem to have been used for mathematical calculations that required understanding of complex numerical relationships, including concepts that weren't formally developed in European mathematics until much later. Recent computer analysis of surviving quipu has revealed patterns that suggest they encoded information in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The position of knots, the direction of their twist, the spacing between clusters, and the colours of the strings all seem to carry meaning in a system that may have been more complex than many modern writing systems. Some researchers believe that the quipu represented a three-dimensional form of writing that could encode not just facts and figures, but the emotional and spiritual context that gave those facts meaning. The most intriguing aspect of the quipu is their apparent ability to store and transmit information across vast distances and time periods. The Inca Empire, which stretched from Ecuador to Chile, used quipu as their primary means of administrative communication. Runners carried these knotted messages along mountain paths, covering hundreds of miles to deliver reports that had to be perfectly accurate. The system worked with a reliability that allowed the empire to function efficiently across terrain that challenged even modern communication networks. In the twist of coloured thread lies the memory of mountains, the count of stars, and the breath of songs that once echoed through valleys now silent. In the burial chambers of ancient Chinese nobles, archaeologists have discovered jade discs that seem to map star systems unknown to naked eye astronomy. These bi-discs, perfectly circular with central holes, are carved with intricate patterns that modern analysis suggests may represent stellar coordinates, planetary positions, and celestial events that shouldn't have been visible to ancient observers. The precision of their construction and the apparent sophistication of their astronomical content raise questions about the extent of ancient Chinese knowledge of the cosmos. The jade itself presents its own mystery. The quality of these ancient discs often exceeds anything that modern craftsmen can produce using traditional techniques. The jade is carved with details so fine that they require magnification to appreciate fully, yet the work shows no tool marks or evidence of the abrasive techniques that would normally be necessary to shape such hard stone. The surfaces are polished to a mirror finish that seems to emit light rather than merely reflect it, creating an effect that makes the carved patterns appear to float above the stone's surface. When researchers began mapping the star patterns carved on these discs, they discovered representations of stellar configurations that matched the positions of stars visible only through telescopes. Some discs show binary star systems that weren't officially discovered until the 20th century, while others display nebulae and star clusters in accurate detail. The implications are staggering. Either the ancient Chinese had access to optical instruments far more advanced than anything in the historical record, or these discs represent knowledge obtained through means that modern science doesn't recognise. The burial contexts of these jade discs provide additional mysteries. They are found exclusively in the tombs of individuals who seem to have held special status as astronomers or calendar keepers, roles that carried enormous prestige in ancient Chinese society. These individuals were buried with bronze instruments that appear to be astronomical calculating devices, as well as silk texts that describe meditation techniques for travelling among the stars and seeing with the eyes of heaven. The meditation practices described in these texts involve techniques for achieving altered states of consciousness that supposedly allowed the practitioner to perceive cosmic distances and stellar movements directly. While modern scientists dismiss such claims as purely mystical, researchers have noted intriguing parallels between the ancient descriptions and contemporary accounts of remote viewing and consciousness research. The jade discs may have been created not through technological observation, but through systematic exploration of the mind's ability to transcend ordinary sensory limitations. Deep beneath the island of Malta, carved from living rock in chambers that predate Stonehenge by 1,000 years, lies an acoustic marvel that challenges everything we think we know about ancient engineering. The Halsaflieni Hypogeum, discovered accidentally in 1902, consists of 3 levels of chambers carved with such precision that they create acoustic effects that modern engineers struggle to explain. The chambers amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, creating a sonic environment that seems designed to alter human consciousness. The most remarkable feature of the Hypogeum is the Oracle Chamber, a small room carved from the ceiling of the main hall. When someone speaks into this chamber in a specific frequency range, typically a male voice in the lower register, the sound is amplified and transmitted throughout the entire complex with perfect clarity. The effect is so pronounced that whispers spoken in the Oracle Chamber can be heard clearly in rooms 3 levels away, while normal conversation in the same space is barely audible, even to people standing nearby. Acoustic analysis has revealed that the chambers are tuned to frequencies that correspond to human brainwave patterns, particularly those associated with deep meditation and altered states of consciousness. People who spend time in the Hypogeum often report unusual experiences, vivid dreams, heightened intuition, and sometimes encounters with presences or voices that seem to come from the stones themselves. These effects are consistent enough that the site has strict limits on visitor numbers and duration of visits. The construction of the Hypogeum presents its own puzzles. The chambers are carved from limestone using techniques that left no tool marks, creating surfaces that are smooth as glass and fitted with joints that are perfectly level. The 3 levels are connected by passages that spiral downward in patterns that seem to follow the golden ratio, creating an architectural harmony that affects visitors on a visceral level even before they become consciously aware of the mathematical relationships involved. Carbon dating places the construction of the Hypogeum between 4000 and 2500 BCE, making it contemporary with the Great Pyramids of Egypt and significantly older than most other megalithic sites in Europe. Yet the sophistication of its acoustic design suggests knowledge of sound engineering that wasn't formally developed until the modern era. The builders clearly understood principles of resonance, frequency amplification, and psychoacoustic effects that contemporary architects are only beginning to explore. Local legends describe the Hypogeum as a place where the living could communicate with the dead, where oracle priests received visions of the future, and where the boundaries between worlds grew thin. While such accounts might be dismissed as folklore, the acoustic properties of the chambers do indeed create effects that could easily be interpreted as supernatural by people unfamiliar with the physics of sound resonance. The precise frequencies that the chambers amplify correspond not only to human brainwaves, but to the resonant frequency of human bone structure, creating physical sensations that accompany the auditory effects. Stone holds memory longer than flesh, and in the deepest chambers, the whispers of 10,000 years still echo, waiting for ears that remember how to listen. In the mountains of Colombia, among artifacts recovered from sites that predate European contact by centuries, metallurgists have discovered objects made from alloys that shouldn't exist. These pre-Columbian metalworks display properties that modern science struggles to explain: corrosion resistance that exceeds contemporary standards, strength to weight ratios that rival space-age materials, and internal structures that suggest manufacturing techniques unknown to historical metallurgy. The most puzzling examples are small figurines that appear to be made from a platinum-iridium alloy, metals that require temperatures of over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit to smelt, far beyond what should have been achievable with its ancient furnace technology. Yet spectrographic analysis confirms that these objects are indeed made from this incredibly durable and heat-resistant combination, crafted with precision that indicates complete mastery of the alloying process. Even more mysterious are objects that appear to be composed of metallic elements that don't correspond to any known substances. X-ray crystallography reveals atomic structures that follow patterns consistent with metallic bonding, but the specific arrangements don't match any elements on the periodic table. Some researchers suggest these may be examples of materials created through techniques that science has yet to rediscover, possibly involving the manipulation of atomic structures at levels that require technology beyond current capabilities. The craftsmanship of these objects is as remarkable as their composition. Many feature details so fine that they can only be appreciated under magnification, yet they show no evidence of the tool marks that would normally be expected from such precise work. The surfaces are finished to a smoothness that exceeds what modern polishing techniques can achieve, and many display internal structures that seem to have been formed in a single process, rather than assembled from separate components. Local traditions describe the ancient metalworkers as possessing secret knowledge passed down through generations of master craftsmen. According to these accounts, the techniques involve not just skill with fire and forge, but understanding of the spiritual properties of metals, the ability to work with the inherent nature of the materials, rather than forcing them into predetermined shapes. The metalworkers were said to communicate with the spirits of the metals themselves, learning from the materials how they preferred to be shaped and combined. Modern attempts to recreate these alloys have been unsuccessful. Even when researchers know the exact composition of an ancient object, they cannot replicate its properties using contemporary techniques. The ancient metals seem to have achieved a level of structural perfection that eludes modern manufacturing, suggesting that the original creators possessed knowledge of metallurgy that has been lost to time. The objects remain as testimony to capabilities that challenge our understanding of what was possible in the ancient world, silent witnesses to sciences that history has forgotten how to practice. As the afternoon light fades through the laboratory windows, Dr. Vasquez adjusts the ancient lens one final time, watching as the impossible images shimmer and shift in the crystalline depths. The mountains beyond the window appear solid and permanent, but through the lens she can see them as they were when the ice sheets covered half the world, when vast forests stretched to horizons that no longer exist. The lens doesn't just show the past, it reveals the impermanence of everything we consider fixed and certain, reminding her that the present moment is just one frame in an infinite reel of time. In the growing darkness, the lens begins to glow with its own inner light, preparing to reveal what tomorrow's dawn will bring to those who remember how to look beyond the visible world into the spaces between moments where all possibilities exist simultaneously. The weight of accumulated mystery settles like dust motes in cathedral light, each particle carrying the whispered questions of millennia. In the deepest archives where silence has learned to speak in objects, the most profound enigmas wait with the patience of stone and the persistence of memory. These are not merely artifacts that challenge chronology, they are windows into possibilities our cautious minds have learned to close, doorways to understanding that our ancestors may have walked through with ease, leaving only footprints in clay that hardened into riddles we cannot solve. In the mountains of Peru, where the air grows thin and legends thicken, like morning mist, lie the ruins of Sacsayhuamán. Here, massive stones fit together with a precision that defies the tools supposedly available to the Inca. But it is not the stones themselves that whisper the deepest mysteries. It is what lies hidden within them, discovered only when fragments break away to reveal something that should not exist. Metal clamps of impossible composition, alloys that modern science struggles to replicate, materials that speak of knowledge lost to the turning of ages. The metallurgical analysis reveals percentages of elements that should not exist together, combinations that require temperatures and techniques that supposedly were not developed until the industrial age. Yet here they rest, embedded in constructions that predate recorded history, as if the builders possessed secrets that died with them, leaving only these silent testimonies to capabilities we have forgotten how to imagine. Dr. Elena Vasquez runs her fingers along the smooth surface of one such fragment, extracted from the heart of a massive stone block. The metal is warm to the touch, almost alive in its responsiveness to human contact. Under electron microscopy, it reveals a crystalline structure that seems to shift and flow, as if the very atoms remember the hands that shaped them. The isotopic signatures point to elements that should not exist in these ratios, processed through methods that leave no trace of their execution. In laboratories around the world, similar mysteries emerge from other ancient sites. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, standing for over 16 centuries without a trace of rust, composed of iron so pure that modern industry cannot replicate its perfection. The aluminum artifacts found in ancient Chinese tombs, predating the discovery of aluminum extraction by thousands of years. Each piece a testament to lost knowledge, each analysis revealing new impossibilities. The ancient texts speak of fires that burned without consuming, of metals that flowed like water at the command of those who understood the deeper songs of matter. Their Sanskrit epics describe vimanas crafted from materials that never aged, never corroded, never lost their strength. Modern science dismisses these as mythology, yet the evidence lies cold and undeniable in laboratory storage rooms, each sample tagged with coordinates from archaeological sites that should not have produced such technological marvels. Perhaps the most haunting discoveries come from the deepest excavations, where time itself seems to have pooled in dark corners. Tools made from materials that register on no periodic table, their composition shifting depending on the method of analysis, as if they exist in a state of quantum uncertainty, refusing to be pinned down by modern understanding. The researchers who study them report strange dreams afterward, visions of great workshops filled with fires that burned blue and gold, tended by figures whose faces remain forever obscured by the brilliance of their craft. Memory, they say, is fragile, but what if they are wrong? What if memory can be imprinted in stone, crystallized in silicon, preserved in the very mineral matrix of the earth? In the caves of France, deep beneath Chartres Cathedral, lie stones that seem to hold echoes of ancient voices. When subjected to precise acoustic frequencies, these limestone formations resonate with tones that form complex harmonics, patterns that suggest purpose, intention, design. The phenomenon was first noticed by accident, when restoration work on the cathedral's foundations revealed chambers that had been sealed for centuries. The workers reported hearing faint music emanating from the walls, melodies that seemed to shift and change with the time of day, the season, the phase of the moon. Scientists initially dismissed these reports as the imagination, the product of working too long in confined spaces beneath the weight of centuries. But Dr. Marie Rousseau, an acoustical engineer with a passion for medieval architecture, decided to investigate. She brought sophisticated recording equipment into the sealed chambers, devices capable of detecting frequencies far beyond human hearing. What she discovered there changed her understanding of the relationship between sound, stone, and memory forever. The stones were singing, not metaphorically, but literally generating sound waves at frequencies that corresponded to specific musical intervals. More remarkably, these frequencies formed patterns that matched the golden ratio, the same mathematical relationships found in the proportions of the human body, in the spiral of galaxies, in the growth patterns of leaves and flowers. The stones had been shaped not just by human hands, but by an understanding of cosmic harmony that spoke to principles we are only beginning to rediscover. Further analysis revealed that the acoustic properties of the chamber were not accidental. The entire structure had been designed as a kind of resonance chamber, shaped to amplify and focus specific frequencies. The most startling discovery came when Dr. Rousseau realized that the frequencies being generated by the stones matched brainwave patterns associated with deep meditation, transcendent states of consciousness, and what mystics throughout history have described as direct experience of the divine. Similar discoveries began emerging from sacred sites around the world. The temples of Malta, with their precisely carved chambers that focus sound in ways that induce altered states of consciousness. The dolmens of Ireland, whose stone circles generate infrasonic frequencies that affect human perception and emotion. The great chambers beneath the pyramids of Egypt, designed with acoustic properties that transform the human voice into something otherworldly. something that seems to reach beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience. Each site tells the same story. Ancient builders who understood the relationship between sound, consciousness, and stone in ways that we are only beginning to fathom. They created not just monuments to their gods, but instruments of transformation, tools for accessing states of awareness that our modern world has largely forgotten. The stones remember what we have chosen to forget, and they continue to sing their ancient songs for those who know how to listen. Numbers do not lie, or so we tell ourselves. Yet in the measurements of ancient structures around the world, mathematics reveals truths that challenge our understanding of when and how advanced knowledge was acquired. The Great Pyramid of Giza encodes the relationship between pi and the golden ratio, with a precision that would be impressive for modern architects armed with computers and laser measurements. For builders working with supposedly primitive tools over 4,000 years ago, such accuracy should have been impossible. Professor James Hartwell, a mathematician at Cambridge, has spent decades analysing the measurements embedded in ancient monuments. His work reveals patterns that suggest the existence of a unified system of knowledge, a mathematical understanding that spanned continents and cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. The same proportions appear in the temples of Cambodia and the cathedrals of Europe, in the stone circles of Britain and the pyramids of Mexico. The numbers whisper of a lost science that understood the deep connections between mathematics and consciousness, between geometry and the fundamental structures of reality. The ancient builders were not merely constructing monuments to their gods, they were encoding information that would survive the rise and fall of civilizations, mathematical truths that would remain constant even as languages died and cultures disappeared. Consider the measurements of Stonehenge, where the spacing of the stones encodes astronomical data with a startling precision. The monument functions as a computer made of stone, calculating the movements of celestial bodies with an accuracy that rivals modern instruments. But how did Bronze Age builders acquire such knowledge? How did they develop the mathematical sophistication necessary to predict eclipses, track the precession of the equinoxes, and align their monument with stellar events that occur only once in thousands of years? The questions multiply when we examine sites like Angkor Wat, where the entire temple complex forms a scale model of the cosmos, as understood by ancient Khmer astronomers. The distances between temples, the heights of towers, the lengths of causeways, all encode precise astronomical data that demonstrates knowledge of the Earth's circumference and the distances to celestial bodies. Such information should not have been available to 12th century builders, yet there it stands, carved in stone and impossible to dismiss. In the Americas, the mathematical sophistication of the Maya continues to astound researchers. Their calendar system tracked cycles of time with an accuracy that surpasses our own Gregorian calendar. They calculated the synodic period of Venus to within hours of the modern determination, predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance, and developed a concept of zero independently of other civilizations. Their mathematical texts, written in jade and obsidian, describe calculations that require an understanding of infinity, concepts that European mathematics would not develop until the Renaissance. Yet perhaps the most mysterious mathematical artifact comes from the depths of a Mesopotamian archive, where cuneiform tablets describe calculations that seem to transcend the boundaries of earthbound astronomy. These texts, dating to the Neo-Babylonian period, contain mathematical formulas that accurately describe the orbital mechanics of planets that would not be discovered until the invention of the telescope. They speak of cycles within cycles, of mathematical harmonies that connect the movements of electrons around atomic nuclei to the dance of galaxies around cosmic centers. The implications are staggering. Either ancient mathematicians somehow acquired knowledge that should have been impossible to obtain without modern instruments, or they inherited this knowledge from sources that have been lost to history. The numbers carved in stone suggest that our ancestors possessed an understanding of the universe's mathematical foundations that we are only beginning to rediscover. as if they were students in a cosmic classroom whose teachers departed before we learned to ask the right questions. In the end, perhaps the greatest mystery is not what these ancient objects are, but what they represent. Doorways to understanding that we have collectively chosen to close. Knowledge that we have decided is too dangerous or too challenging to fully embrace. Each impossible artifact stands as a testament to human potential that we have somehow forgotten. Capabilities that once flourished in the space between what we call possible and what we dare to dream. The Baghdad battery sits in its display case, still capable of generating electrical current after 2 millennia. The Antikythera mechanism continues to calculate celestial positions with clockwork precision. The crystal skulls reflect light in ways that create optical illusions that seem to peer directly into the observer's soul. The London hammer remains embedded in stone older than the species that supposedly created it. Each artifact a question mark carved in matter. Each measurement a challenge to comfortable assumptions about the past. Dr. Sarah Chen, curator of impossible objects at the British Museum, walks through her private archive in the early hours before dawn. Here, away from public scrutiny, rest the artifacts too controversial for the display, too challenging for comfortable exhibition. She pauses before a case containing fragments of metal extracted from ancient sites around the world, each piece tagged with coordinates and dates that place them thousands of years before the supposed invention of advanced metallurgy. Under her breath, she whispers the question that has haunted archaeologists and historians for generations. What did they know that we have forgotten? The answer seems to shimmer in the silence between her words, elusive as moonlight on water, substantial as the artifacts themselves. Perhaps the question itself is flawed. Perhaps the issue is not what they knew, but how they knew it. What sources of information were available to them that we have lost? What methods of understanding they possessed that we have abandoned in our rush toward technological mastery? The ancient objects speak, but not in languages we recognize. They communicate through precision, through impossible perfection, through the simple fact of their existence in times and places where they should not exist. They tell stories of human consciousness operating at levels we no longer access, of awareness that could perceive patterns and possibilities that our modern minds have learned to filter out as impossible or irrelevant. In the quantum laboratories of the 21st century, physicists discover that consciousness itself affects reality at the most fundamental levels, that the act of observation changes the observed, that the universe is far stranger and more interconnected than classical science ever imagined. Perhaps the ancient builders understood this intuitively, worked with principles that we are only now beginning to formulate in mathematical terms. Perhaps they created their impossible objects by accessing states of consciousness that allowed them to work directly with the fabric of reality, shaping matter through understanding rather than force. The artifacts wait in their cases, patient as eternity itself. They have watched civilizations rise and fall, seen knowledge gained and lost, witnessed the endless cycle of remembering and forgetting that seems to characterize human history. They are not just objects from the past, they are messages to the future, reminders of potential that lies dormant within human consciousness, waiting for the right moment to reawaken. As the first light of dawn filters through the museum windows, it illuminates the displays with a golden glow that seems to make the artifacts shimmer with inner life. In this liminal moment between night and day, between sleeping and waking, the impossible objects seem to pulse with a rhythm that matches the heartbeat of those who created them so long ago. They remember what we have forgotten, and they wait with infinite patience for us to remember once again. In a small museum in Prague, tucked away in a narrow alley where tourists rarely venture, sits a crystal sphere of impossible clarity. No tools mar its surface, no sign of the cutting or polishing that should have been necessary to create such perfection. It was found in a sealed chamber beneath the cathedral, buried beneath layers of stone and time that speak of ages beyond recorded history. The curator, An elderly man whose eyes hold the depth of decades spent contemplating mysteries notices that visitors often pause before this display longer than others. They stand transfixed, as if the crystal is showing them something that words cannot express. Children are particularly drawn to it, pressing faces against the glass and whispering to the sphere as if it were an old friend who might whisper back. Late at night, when the museum is closed and the streets outside have grown quiet, the crystal sphere seems to pulse with a soft inner light. Security cameras record nothing unusual, but guards report dreams filled with images of vast workshops where artisans with faces hidden by brilliant light-shaped matter, with their thoughts alone, where knowledge flowed like water between minds that had no need for words or books. The sphere holds no answers, only questions that multiply like fractals in the depths of its perfect clarity. It reflects the faces of those who peer into it, but something in the reflection seems changed, enhanced, as if the crystal shows not what is, but what could be. It whispers of potential sleeping in human consciousness, of capabilities that lie dormant in minds that have learned to limit themselves to what seems possible. Perhaps this is the ultimate message of all the impossible objects scattered across the world, that human potential is far greater than we imagine, that consciousness itself is the tool that shapes reality, that the boundaries we accept as fixed are simply habits of thought that can be transcended by those who dare to dream beyond the comfortable limits of the possible. The artifacts wait in museums and private collections, in archaeological storage rooms and university laboratories. They wait for minds capable of understanding their true message, consciousness prepared to accept the implications of their existence. They are not just objects from a forgotten past. They are seeds of a remembered future, crystallized potential waiting for the right conditions to bloom once again. As sleep approaches and consciousness begins its nightly journey into realms where impossible things become commonplace, where the barriers between past and future dissolve like morning mist, the ancient objects continue their patient vigil. They hold their secrets close, but they hold them lovingly, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to remember what it has forgotten, to reclaim the extraordinary capabilities that are our birthright, to step once again into the space between the possible and the miraculous, where our ancestors walked with such confident grace. In dreams, perhaps, we touch the edges of that lost knowledge. In the space between sleeping and waking, we glimpse the workshops where impossible objects were created, through the marriage of consciousness and matter, where artisans worked with forces we have forgotten how to perceive. The objects wait for us to wake up from the dream of limitation, to remember the deeper dream of unlimited human potential that they embody in their impossible perfection. Sleep now and dream of crystal spheres that hold the light of vanished suns, of mechanisms that calculate the dance of stars with gears of impossible precision, of batteries that draw power from the space between atoms, of metals that sing with the memory of hands that shaped them in fires that burned with the colours of aurora. Dream of the questions they ask and the answers they contain, the potential they represent and the future they promise. The impossible objects rest in their cases, patient guardians of mysteries that sleep in the depths of human consciousness. They have waited through the dark ages of forgetting, through centuries of denial and dismissal. They will wait through whatever ages yet to come, holding their secrets sacred, maintaining their vigil, until the day when human awareness expands once again to embrace the extraordinary, and the impossible becomes possible once more. If this story stayed with you as you drifted off, support the channel by liking, sharing and subscribing. We release weekly journeys into the forgotten, and every dreaming soul is welcome here.